Hello and welcome back to our channel, American Ultra Stock. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today, as you see on Braden's background, we're going to be doing an overview analysis of what the GA Cup was this year. I think it's fair to say it was a success. We got Braden's Philadelphia Union winning the trophy, the most meaningful one, where it's an older age group. And starting exactly on that note, Braden, this competition, as we said, it's one of the best ones, if not the best one, to measure our talent, going up against toe-to-toe with some of the best academies around the world. How do you put into words the relevancy and how important this competition is, and how do you overview it as well? Was it successful this year in terms of comparing our talent and where we are in the development of MLS academies with the world's best?
I think this is a very, very important tournament every year because it really shows us where we are as a country youth in terms of youth development, comparing every MLS academy at both age groups to select international teams that want to come and play in this tournament. I think that's the important part. We're not like begging them, recruiting them. These giants from all over the world want to play in this tournament, want to put up their youth prospects against some of the best in the US. And I think it's a really good judge as to where we are, where our prospects are. Luckily, we've had some American winners the past couple of years, as well as a couple international ones as well in the past. But I think it's a good judge. But I do have to say, as for whether it was successful, I think this year was an absolute disaster. And it's not really due to the on-the-pitch stuff. We have to talk about the on-the-pitch stuff, off-the-pitch stuff, sorry. The racial abuse, it has to be mentioned when we're talking about this topic. It's not fun to talk about or anything, but it has to be brought to light. Monterrey and Hajduk Split, both racially abusing New York Red Bulls U17s. I am incredibly proud of all their players and everyone at the academy for the New York Red Bulls who made the decision to leave the tournament. Despite their U15 still being alive in the tournament, they were in, I believe, the quarterfinals, could have made a run, a very talented team, but the whole academy decided to leave. Incredible decision by the players, and I think they showed maturity beyond their years. Also, the Union showing support for them, the U17s, in their match against Hajduk Split, fortunately beating them, avenging the Red Bulls. I thought that was really nice to see as well. There was also some alleged abuse from one of the Union parents towards a Flamengo player, although I'm not sure the validity of that, just because there isn't any evidence. But if that is true, we don't condone that either. But with the not so fun stuff out of the way, let's get more into the fun stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Just on that note, on the negative aspects of this year's edition, I'm just going to say that it's a huge L from Apple TV and MLS. I think that we should foment and really try to grasp any chance we have to develop and grow the soccer culture in the US, and getting the fans the opportunity to watch the players. Come on, these guys aren't pros. No one's paying tickets to go there, so why not just stream it? Props to RSL for doing so. I don't know if it was allowed or not, but just creating a connection with your fan base and with prospects that we hope will get to wear the main clubs jerseys in the future, something that's so important. And we see in Brazil, in Argentina, competitions, Copa São Paulo, Los Jóvenes, in Uruguay as well, baby football is what they call. You just get the opportunity to watch the youth players, youth academy players that are going to represent your club at the higher level, and get a connection and be able to watch their path all the way to the top. And we didn't. So I think it's also a huge negative there. But now moving on to the main players that you would like to highlight, Braden. I know that we made a video that was quite successful. We want to thank all of you guys that tuned in for that one. And you mentioned some players that were one of the best in the group stage, and they ended up not letting you down at all. Which ones would you like to highlight after everything is said and done and the tournament's over?
Yeah, so we'll start with the U17s here just because it's more of a sure thing. You know, these players are more proven, more grown up. The U15s, it's a bit of a guessing game, really. We will mention them briefly at the end, but really it's anyone's guess as to who's going to turn out good from that age group, such young kids. But for the U17s, we're going to do a best 11 format just because I think there is so much talent that wants to be mentioned. And if we talked about all of them, this video would be way too long. So we're just going to highlight the best 11 that I think have the highest potential out of this tournament, not necessarily the best performers. Some of them will be. And we'll start off with the goalkeeper. I'm going for Owen Pratt for LA Galaxy. the 15-year-old. I thought he was sensational throughout the entire tournament. Even in the last match against the Union, he saved a penalty, made some really, really good saves throughout the tournament. And the fact that he's playing up 2 years shows how good of a player he is. I think it's also notable to mention that he has actually trained with the USMNT when he was 14 years old. Obviously, he wasn't part of the roster, but they had a camp in LA. They invited him out. He trained with the main goalkeepers from the A team, which I think is incredible experience and exposure for him. He's been with US Youth National Team camps. He's part of this current loaded U16 group. A lot of those players are also going to be on this best 11. But I think the sky's the limit for him. I think he has the highest potential, although Gavin Atkinson from the Union did end up winning goalkeeper of the tournament. Props to him as well. I think he's excellent too. But moving on to the defense, at right back, I'm going for another Galaxy player, the finalists in this age group. I'm going for Harbour Miller. I think he's shown incredible promise as a defender, but particularly going forward. For the Galaxy, he created one of their goals basically by himself. The goal shouldn't have even really happened, to be honest. Atkinson made a bit of a mistake, but he did so well on the wing, getting it into a dangerous position. And I think that is just a perfect example of how good he can be going forward. Very solid defensively as well. And similar thing for the left back, Dominic Chongqui for Atlanta. He didn't have the greatest tournament, neither did Atlanta, disappointing in the group stage. But I think he's still the highest potential left back by far for this age group. I think he has great things ahead of him. Expect to see him with Atlanta United's second team very, very soon. And the sky's the limit for him as well. As for the center backs, there's only really one that stood out to me as having really high potential within this tournament is Neil Pierre from the Philadelphia Union. He's played a lot of minutes so far for Union 2 in MLS Next Pro. He's also been with the most recent US U19 camp. And to do that, having only just broken into the second team in MLS Next Pro, I think is a huge vote of confidence from USSF as to what he can become, his potential. He just stops everything. His on-the-ball ability leaves a little to be desired, but as a 6'6" kid at such a young age, that's kind of to be expected. He's good defensively. He's an aerial threat. Really all you can want from a center back besides the on-the-ball ability. If I had to pick another one for potential, I'd go for his partner, Andrew Craig, who wasn't playing in this tournament because of an injury. But the brother of Brandon, we know how talented Brandon is, especially on the ball. His passing range is elite for a center back. The fact that he even takes set pieces from that position as well is kind of unheard of. I think his brother has just as many capabilities to be as good as him. But if we're going to go for a player who did play at the tournament, I'm going to go for Oliver Tahn. He's not a center back, but he is a defender. I thought he was very versatile going forward, especially he even scored a hat trick from right back, which I thought was really impressive in the group stage over Chicago Fire. I think he's another one to watch. He's been with the US U15s in the past. So many good fullbacks in particular to mention here in this age group. Now, moving on to the midfield, I'm going to go for Jude Terry from LAFC for the first spot at the 6. Just watching this guy, especially against River Plate, who are their hardest competition, the Argentine Giants, I was so impressed with them. Honestly, he was the only LAFC player in that game who looked like he belonged on the pitch with the Argentines, and he was one of the best players on it. I think he's so good defensively going forward. He really owned the midfield, and he does it all the time. He's a regular with LAFC's second team, and there's hopes that he could potentially be their first homegrown to really break through the team, which they haven't really had since becoming an MLS club. Moving on further up the pitch to the 8 position, he's kind of a 10, but I put him at the 8 here. Maximo Carrizo from NYCFC, the youngest ever homegrown signing in MLS history, and I don't think that record will ever be broken because he signed it on his 14th birthday, which I believe is the youngest possible that you can sign a homegrown deal. He's so highly rated by NYCFC and City Football Group in general. Maybe he could end up at Man City at some point, like Kevin Sullivan, who's already looking to be signed by them. But I think this Argentine-American dual national is so good. He's been with both youth groups. He's already been a regular for NYCFC's second team at such a young age. I think when he was playing in this tournament, which he's kind of graduated past the level of, he was just a class above. Every time he was on the ball, he was doing something otherworldly, it seemed, compared to the rest of the level of the players on the pitch. At the 10, I've mentioned him already, Kevin Sullivan. He didn't have the greatest tournament. I'll be the first to admit that. I was a little disappointed from what I saw, but he still showed flashes every game. As a 14-year-old playing up with 17-year-olds, 3 age groups up, everyone still expected him to be the best player on the pitch because of the hype. He wasn't, obviously, but he still showed a lot of flashes, scored the crucial equalizer in the final. did miss his penalty, but that's gonna happen to players. I mean, we've seen Balogun miss so many penalties, and he's still a great striker. But I think Sullivan's so good. And another thing to note is every time a team plays against the Union U17s, it's a final to them. Because of the hype that Calvin has, it's so much more attention on the game. These teams want to show out and impress and be like, hey, look, I'm better than this wonder kid who Man City are hyping so much. But I think he has so much potential. We can't even begin to describe how much potential this kid has, but hopefully he just continues to develop with the Union too, and the Union eventually. Hopefully next season he makes his MLS debut and just continues to develop before he ends up going to Man City. Talking about 14-year-olds, at left wing, I have another one, and one that should probably be hyped as much as Cabin, although it's probably good for his development that he isn't. Mathieu Albert, the French dual national from LA Galaxy, he was also, I think, very, very good. I thought he was better than Cabin this tournament in particular, and as a 14-year-old playing up through age groups, it's not something we should take lightly. I know all the hype around Cabin, but Albert should be getting the same amount of recognition. He's been a better player. He's probably going to join Borussia Dortmund. There's so many teams in Europe that want him, but Dortmund have been the main ones to have interest, have concrete interest, and seem to be the favorites right now to sign him once he does turn 16. That's an advantage for him as well over Cavan. He can go to Europe at 16. Cavan has to wait till 18 because of the Brexit rules with Manchester City, even though he does have a European passport as well with Germany. I think Albert's the most exciting winger prospect we have right now, and I'm looking forward to watching his development. Already playing for LA Galaxy's second team at just 14 years old. He's going to be special. His winger partner in this best 11 at right wing, I've mentioned him a couple times in this channel. I think actually the last two videos. Jameer Johnson from the Union, the US-Jamaican dual national. He's such an impressive player. And the fact that he can still manage to thrive for the Union in a system that doesn't use wingers, I think is so impressive to me. He's kind of taken up the Quinn Sullivan role. If any of you watched the Union's first team in MLS, plays as a center mid primarily, but is allowed some freedom to shift out wide, take players on, and he's so good at it. If you watch his assist to Kevin Sullivan in the final, it's the perfect example. Absolutely dusted another player who I had in my best 11 here, Harbour Miller, just embarrassed him, and he's one of the best defender prospects in the country. I think this 15-year-old playing up an age group as well, like, he's such a good player. He could have been with the U16s, but he's one of the best players in the U17 age group. And then to round it out, I know this has been going on for a while, but at striker, I've got two players because I think they both deserve equal recognition. Stefan Chirilla from Cincy's Academy won the Golden Boot at this tournament. Such a good player. Cincy did get knocked out early due to a bit of a lackluster performance from the surrounding parts, but Chirilla's got over 30 goals this season for Cincy since joining them from Philly's Academy due to a lack of opportunities, and he's really making Philly regret it. Such a good striker. He's already made his debut in MLS Next Pro as well, as I think most of these players have. But he should be very exciting to watch alongside his strike partner, Jaikees Fields, who since you're looking to sign from Hoffenheim U17s. If they stay together for the MLS Next Pro, they're going to be very dangerous to watch. But the other striker I wanted to mention was Diego Rocio, because he won player of the tournament, 5 goals in the last 3 games, including a crucial one in the final and a brace in the semis and the quarters to win Union the tournament. Also scored his penalty as well. Such a great player up top. Anis Saidi gets more of the recognition as his strike partner, but I think Rocio is a better player. American, Mexican dual national. He's been with both youth national teams. He's going to be a highly coveted prospect. Maybe the next Fidel Barajas in that aspect.
Absolutely. That rounds it up on the best 11 that we have in the tournament. And props to you, Braden, for covering this tournament, watching adamantly watching it and being able to give these reports because, again, we didn't have the opportunity to watch it. And, again, the performances of the players, even the score lines, if you just look at the players that scored, I mean, I think it backs up all of the takes you had previously. Again, I was able to include some of these guys' pictures right here. And here's the best 11 all fielded out so you guys can have a picture. Definitely players that can be a part of the USMNT sphere in the future. So just wanted to touch base on that very briefly. If you had to pick 3 players that you would bank on, I think this is a question that a subscriber put in the comments in the past about another video that we did recently about the most underrated prospects. But out of this GA Cup class, if you want to call it, which are the 3 players that you think have the highest ceiling in terms of playing for the USMNT in a very significant way in the future?
I'll make this quick. I think it's two attacking-based players just due to the sheer potential they have. It's the two 14-year-olds, Kevin Sullivan and Mathieu Albert. I spoke so highly about them earlier, and the praise won't stop coming. Like I said, they're already such incredible players, already playing in MLS Next Pro as 14-year-olds. They're both about to sign homegrown deals, probably. Maybe Albert will hold out and go to Europe at 16. But Kevin was supposed to do that, hold out, go to Europe, but he ended up saying he's going to sign a homegrown deal, the most expensive in MLS history, stay with the Union until 18. Maybe Mathieu Albert will do the same. Maybe he'll go to Europe, which would probably be better for his development. The next American in that Dortmund pipeline, Pulisic, Reina have come through there to great success at such young ages. I think he could be the next if he goes through there. And then the other one, I'll go for Neil Pierre, just because I think he's so physically imposing, especially at such a young age. He's going to continue to grow, even fill out his frame a little bit more. As a 6'6" center back, like I said, he's an aerial threat and so dominant in the defense. And I just think center back's probably the weakest position we have in the USMNT pool right now and for the future. If you look at even the Olympic pool right now, there's really only one that I'm really confident about for the Olympics. We're going to have to call up some overage players. So just due to the lack of depth in that pool, I think I'm going to put Neil Pierre there as the third player.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say that kid looks gigantic. I mean, you watched on the highlights. What is that? Yeah, he's gigantic for his age. And I think that you mentioned perhaps some core deficiencies technically on the ball. That's expected with a guy that's that size. I mean, he makes up in other ways. But now, talking about kids that already look gigantic, we move on to the younger ones, the U15s. Again, the reason why we're putting them afterwards is because at this age group, there's still some uncertainties. We don't really know if these guys will pan out and be pros. They're definitely on the right path, and props to them. But if you want to briefly mention some players that caught your eye, and again, the scouting was really peak during that previous video. So the ones that you want to highlight after, again, everything was said and done, which are the ones that make your list, Braden?
So I'll start out with probably the best American talent in this age pool. I'm going to go for KK Spivey. Same age year as Albert and Kevin Sullivan as an 09. He joins them as that elite group. He could have been playing with the U17s, to be honest, but Quakes wanted to go all out with their U15s. Unfortunately, it didn't pan out. I think KK would have been the player of the tournament if they had made it a little bit farther. He was so good every single game, scoring goals, setting up teammates. They have a very good team around him as well, but he's the standout by far. I think he's going to work wonders for San Jose. He should be, even in the U17s next year, in MLS Next Pro in a year or two. He's going to be a big one to watch out for. The next two to mention are the two 2010s standouts that were in this tournament. Robert Turdine from the Chicago Fire, who ended up actually winning the consolation bracket. It was a huge surprise to many, including myself, when they ended up getting knocked out of the group stage. But it was just an early setback and a bigger bounce back as they ended up going through the consolation bracket, the Premier Division, ended up winning it all. Turdine was fantastic, had a couple of really good chances in the final, especially that he probably should have scored on, but that's just going to get better as he grows. He's still playing an age group up here as a 2010 birthday. And I think he's one of the brightest prospects in the Chicago Fire pipeline, in one that has produced so many good players, particularly at the goalkeeper position, but even players like Brian Gutierrez, Sergio Orahel, Javier Casas as well. I think Robert Turdine's the next in that direction. And then the other one, Will Recupero, he's actually a guest player at this tournament. He plays for Boston Bolts, a lesser-known academy currently in Massachusetts, but he did guest play for the New England Revolution, and I thought he looked pretty solid. His potential is through the roof. I think he's by far the best non-MLS Academy player in the country, at least in terms of potential. There's probably some like 06s and 07s that are better than him, but as a 2010 birthday, that's to be expected. I think he's going to be really good as well. I expect him to probably get signed to the Revolution at some point. I just don't know how sustainable the pathway is with Boston Bolts, considering that they're not even a USL Academy. There doesn't seem to be a pathway to the pros there. But it's nice that he's giving some representation to some lesser-known clubs, because I think we do need more of that in America in general. A couple other ones to mention. Ignacio Suarez, I think, was absolutely sensational for me. Atlanta didn't have the best tournament. They did well in the group stage, but kind of disappointed in the knockouts. But every bit of success they had came through Ignacio Suarez in the midfield. He actually has a brother as well, who was the youngest player at this tournament as a 2011, Santiago. Look out for him in the coming years. I think he's going to be a key part of their team in the U15s next year. But for this year, Ignacio was very, very good. One of my best 11 players for sure. and I think he's going to have a bright future with Atlanta. I got to mention one goalkeeper in here, Tobias Shevchuk, the dual national from the New York Red Bulls. I think he's a fantastic goalkeeper. He made one or two mistakes in the group stage, but he was just coming back from some action with US Youth National Team and with, I think, Red Bulls too as well. He was even with, as a U15, I think he's been exposed to a lot of good competition at such a young age. So I think he's one of the top goalkeeper prospects maybe in the next generation to focus on. We have a lot of good young goalkeepers around the Olympic age eligible right now, but I think the generation after that, Shevchuk's probably one of the best ones there. And then as a striker, Malik Yakupovic, I had to mention one Union player in here. To be honest, he's the only one worth mentioning right now in this group. They don't look that great. Very disappointing tournament, but he scored almost every goal. I believe he had 4 or 5 goals in total out of 6, 7, or 8. He was basically at the heart of everything. He looks like one of the top 09s in the country as well. Let's just a quick reminder, it is not normal for 2009s to be playing up in the U17s. I know we've seen Calvin and Matthew Albert do it, but they should be playing with the U15s. That's what's to be expected. And the ones that thrive still have great careers. I think Yakupovic is going to be one of those ones, a striker. And a quick honorable mention to Kervon Kerr, an MLS player, but he is Canadian playing for Toronto. The brother of DeAndre Kerr, who's another Toronto homegrown. I thought he was really good in this tournament. And Toronto made a deep run into the semifinals. They were actually the last MLS Academy standing. So repping a little bit for Canada, a little bit disappointed on how the American Academies did, but shout out to them, repping for MLS and their country as well. That doesn't get as much attention in terms of soccer. So shout out to Toronto and shout out to Kervon Kerr. I think he was excellent as a striker for them.
Absolutely. And just before we leave, I know it's a little bit extensive, just some names that you want to pop out there that are international players that you think we will be watching in the future and definitely make the headlines. I mean, they're playing at gigantic academies with a better setup around them. So obviously they have the good of making it at the highest level. So which ones? You mentioned Gahafa. Do you stand by it? And does anyone else get a mention on that list?
100% I stand by my pick for Jose Gahafa from Sporting Portugal. I think he's going to be, like I said in the last J Cup video we made, he's such a good talent. At only 13 years old, lighting up the U15 division for Sporting, he's such a good player. I think these international prospects, like you said, are actually more of a safe bet than the American ones, just due to the system that's around them. They're already playing for youth national teams. And I have to mention the U15 player of the tournament, Marc Martinez from Valencia. The number 10, he just does everything for them. In the game that he was suspended for, you could tell they were missing him. Mind you, they still comfortably won because this Valencia team is stacked. I could mention their entire starting lineup, to be honest, as standouts. But Martinez in particular was at the heart of everything, scoring goals, providing assists. In the final, he was magnificent as well against Toulouse from France. Completely owned the midfield, didn't allow their midfielders that had been standouts previously to do anything. I think he's going to be so good. He's already been with Spain's U15s. He's going to keep progressing up that pipeline. Don't be surprised if he's a future Spain international. Another one to mention, some from that Valencia team, I'll just mention one more. Jerry Akalatse. I think he's dual citizenship for Spanish and I believe Nigeria, but don't quote me on that. I think he's dual citizenship though, but he's such a good winger. And you can tell the professionalism that he has, even as a U15, is off the charts. He always makes the right decisions, whether it's taking players on, which when he does, he always beats them, or holding it up, waiting for his teammates to arrive and support him. He's such a good player. He impressed me so much in that tournament. And then I'll mention one more, Bowen Phillips. I think he's going to be a name that a lot of people might know if they're tracking youth players in England. He recently moved from West Ham's academy to Arsenal's, and Arsenal made a deep run in this tournament, ultimately going out to Toronto in the quarterfinals. But Bowen Phillips was their best player by far, scoring goals in particular. He was their main threat there, and I think he's going to be a pretty good player for their academy. And I'll mention one or two U17s as well, more of sure things like we said. Seok-Jin Han from Jeonbuk Hyundai, I thought was probably the best international player for the U17 age group. He did everything for them. They ultimately ended up losing a very tough game to the Union in the round of 16 that honestly could have been the final if it was set up differently. I think if Jeonbuk were on the other side of the bracket, maybe they make it to the final. And Seok-Jin Han was a proof of that. Such a good player at the group stage. He was kind of slowed down by Neil Pierre, but that's to be expected from a player who's already playing pro minutes. He was with South Korea's U17s at the U17 World Cup last fall, and expect him to keep going up the pipeline. And then I have to mention one more, Austin Jones, the American dual national playing at PSV. Kind of cheating calling him an international player, since hopefully he will be with the US youth national team in the future. Currently with the Netherlands U16s, is a standout for them every time he plays for their youth national teams. He was a standout in this tournament as well, scoring a brace against NYCFC to lead a comeback charge. PSV ultimately did end up coming up just short against Flamengo in the next round, but Austin Jones is a huge talent, and there were U.S. soccer representatives talking to him after that brace against NYCFC. He's fully on the radar for U.S. soccer. They're trying to convince him to change, and ultimately I do think he will.
Yeah, always nice to see these dual nat battles from the moment that they actually start. We typically hear it later on, but this is why this competition, as I said, I just want to emphasize one more time how important it is, and hopefully we see things get better next year in the next edition, not only with the racism, which is despicable, really. You never want to see that, especially at a youth competition. I mean, these guys are also going to be citizens and part of the society, but also for MLS to help us out and just stream these games. So a lot to improve on, but ultimately I think it was a great exposure for our players. This brings us to the end of not only this video, but also our coverage, if you want to call it, of the GA Cup. We'll definitely keep an eye out. Let us know what you thought about this year's coverage, if you enjoyed it or not. You guys seem to have liked it. Leave a comment down below on the players that impressed you the most, and also what you thought about our picks. And we see you guys next time.